I'd now like to introduce to the stage Scott Beasley from Danske Bank, who's one of our ITAM experts in the community. Scott.
Hey, yeah, I'm one of the slightly different takes on this today in terms of I am very much ITAM-focused. Don't worry, I am FinOps certified, so I can get in, just about. But I want to give a different perspective today in terms of how we are managing SaaS from a Danske Bank perspective. In terms of Danske Bank, if people don't know, we are an institution in Denmark, pretty much like Lloyds or RBS, in the British Isles. We cover across mostly of the Nordics. We do have a splashing though in Belfast and in Northern Ireland, and we have about 22,000 employees. That figure I was unsure to put on, but it all makes sense in the next couple of slides. So apart from that, we have three main points of IT. We have Denmark, obviously, from a central perspective. We've got a nice new headquarters, as you can see. We also have a huge IT placement in Lithuania, in Vilnius. And we have a very support from India as well. So what does that mean? It means we have a very complex IT environment. Add to that, we've decided to transform to the cloud. So we have a massive transformation program, moving from our, obviously, domestic central data center into AWS, which along with it comes a huge play of actually what underpins that, what drives the actual operational behavior, and that's SaaS. So with that in mind, during COVID, we had a massive SaaS explosion, but we had no visibility of that in the organization. So what we did as an ITAM function, we decided to make a real kind of business case to see what was out there and what it actually looked like. What was the SaaS sprawl in that environment? Just if, hands up, who's on their SaaS journey now? Who's starting their SaaS journey now? Who started their SaaS journey now? All right, cool. Which links to the 90% of what JR said earlier in terms of the next phase of understanding and adding FinOps kind of practitioner input is around the SaaS environment. So what I tried to do was, what does it make in numbers-wise, and how does it link? So as I was doing my objectives for 2026, what I tried to do was address what was actually being shown in the market and what was driving behavior. And from there, you can see that SaaS spend, as we all know, is growing. And what was scary around this was around that actually if we did nothing today, it actually would grow by about 10%. And then if we add the AI mix in there, and this is where it comes around defining what SaaS is to you in your organization, then it starts to explode even further, and the consumption-based metrics, which we'll go into a bit more detail in a minute. But from our perspective, what I was seeing in our organization is that we had transformation because of the cloud. A lot of vendors were actually transforming from a typical traditional metric into saying we're now subscription and now we are SaaS, which again could devalue or could kind of change that dynamic of how much people are spending annually. So just be aware of that and be very careful about that, what you mean, how you define SaaS, because it has a massive bearing on the kind of numbers you're seeing there on the screen. Also, by deploying, over the last 2 years, we've integrated and deployed a global system which manages and identifies SaaS on an ongoing, almost real-time basis. So through that, the next kind of element involving pricing models really came to home. Actually, the high volume ticket items like ServiceNow and Salesforce we knew about, but the sprawl was in the business. It was massively in the business and changing all the time. The churn of application is scary. We see approximately 100 new applications every month. Either 1 or 2 users just testing it, 1 or 2 users thinking about it, up to hundreds of users already kind of consuming that. So be very aware that actually the sprawl will sit outside of the IT organization, which is a very kind of concerning element, especially when it comes from security and a highly regulated industry like we have in terms of data, who can access the data, where does the data sit. So it has different parameters in different kind of contexts when in a kind of financial organization. Portfolio size is something that I've utilized to set our KPIs and metrics. What does good look like? How do we get to, being best in class? What is best practice? And when you find over time, over the last 2 years, we found 3,000 applications. That starts to think about how do we get to the 800, 600 that relates to the 22,000 users on the organization. So how it all ties together. So from our perspective, we are driving kind of an efficiency mechanism to try to think deduplication. Do we actually need these things? Are they dormant? How long have they been dormant for? And applying kind of like a risk-based approach to start to really kind of funnel down, as Dan said in the MasterCard, funnel down and pick your battles and prioritize in terms of where are the stereotypical top users of these applications, where do they sit in an organization, what business value do they provide, and how many have we got doing the same thing? All these kind of constitute the same conversation, the same kind of driving for the same values. And then we've got the one that's risk and shadow in terms of shadow IT. This one I don't particularly agree with. I think as Danske Bank, we're in quite a good place. We haven't got kind of 50% not being utilized. But we are looking at adoption techniques and why certain areas are looking at different adoption areas. So why have they adopted it more in certain areas than other areas? Is it because of the type of work they do? Is it because of a fundamental regulatory requirement or things like that, right, in terms of that? But what we are seeing is huge duplication across different things. I think, for example, we've got kind of like 25 different whiteboarding applications. That's because people want to come in, use what they've always used. It's easy to access via the web browser. And then we start, delivering output. But actually, Teams does it, right? So that's the standard. And therefore, we should then start to move users to that part of to that application. And then this is the really scary one, that why you need to get a take on the kind of applications is around the change of models. Everyone's moving to consumption-based. What was stereotypically a very high commercial, easily commercial, you buy a number of users, you buy a number of seats, you manage it, you review it annually. Now it's moving into more of a kind of all you can eat, or you can highly consumption-based, where peaks and troughs and adding new features can drive kind of new expense, which is really kind of a high risk on our agenda at the moment. What new applications have integrated AI, which constitutes a different pricing model, which then could inflate the cost. So from those kind of 5 elements, underpinning the top green layer is where we need to be. So what we've done is ensured that we've teamed up, basically. We've collaborated across the business. You can't do this on your own. If I was saying anything, you need to engage with security. You need to engage with the likes of finance, procurement. You need to engage with end-user services. You also need to engage with enterprise architecture from a standardization perspective. You can't do it on this own, but what we have done is providing the vehicle, the data, to allow us to make the right decisions. And that's by giving the visibility across the estate. And that's also about giving on a regular basis. So it's not just a snapshot in time. We can say on a monthly basis the growth or the number of applications that come in the estate, the type of applications, where they sit in the organization, to give us that ability to prioritize and absolutely connect to the right people, have the right conversations, to then start to strengthen that kind of reduction of SaaS applications across the estate. And then with that framework, it allows you to do the delivery endpoints in terms of streamline the application stack. We need to do that. That's a lot tougher than you expect, because you've got different parts of the organization wanting their tool. And that's when you integrate with enterprise architecture. But when you strip it all down, then you get into the big factors in terms of the proper FinOps piece, in terms of saving money, both operationally, for not onboarding or managing applications, and also refining the application stack, but also then from a cost optimization perspective, using the right things at the right time by the right users. And then the final one, because I'm going to get hooked in a minute by Dean, is monitor AI-driven SaaS solutions. So we've invested highly in our own Danske GPT, but we're still seeing proliferation of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, all these applications, right? That is why is that? What doesn't Danske GPT and the investment give an end user that they want to use the applications for? And that's where we can start to restrict it. So if you want to talk to me a bit more, I can talk about this all day. Dean tasked me with 2 years and 10 minutes. I think I've done that. But happy to have a conversation over a coffee, over a beer after. And thanks for your time, guys.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.